I want to bring in NBC's Julie Surkin on Capitol Hill. Garrett Haake spoke to the president-elect this morning, and Matthew Dowd is former chief strategist to the Bush-Cheney campaign in 2004, currently a senior MSNBC political analyst. Welcome all to the chaos. Julie, what is happening on the Hill right now? Does Mike Johnson have a plan B at this point?
Well, we haven't been able to ask Mike Johnson, Chris, because he's been holed up in his office since very early this morning. I was there, so were my colleagues, staking him out as members of his leadership team have been funneling in and out. We saw appropriators in there. We saw some of those conservatives on the House Freedom Caucus, including the gentleman, Andy Harris, that you saw on your screen a couple of moments ago in there. Everybody who's coming out just keeps saying the same things. They are in a holding pattern. They are moving along. There's forward progress, but nobody can actually spell out what that progress is. And I think when you ask if he has a plan B, the plan B that sources told myself and Ali Vitale about last night, which is essentially a government funding bill to March 14th with that disaster aid, with the farm bill extension attached in it, is now essentially a non-starter for President-elect Trump, who, of course, as you'll talk with Garrett about, told him that he needs a debt limit suspension, getting rid of it entirely, which just complicates things so much. Then you have the question of Democrats, who now essentially said, this is Republicans' problem. We're not getting in the middle of it. Here's Hakeem Jeffries earlier.
That bipartisan agreement has now been detonated because House Republicans have been ordered to shut down the government and hurt the very working class Americans that many of them pretend to want to help.
Look, there are mixed opinions here. You have Republican senators, ones that I just talked to, who don't want to shut the government down. They think it is stupid, and neither do leadership in the House or Senate. But of course, you do have members, a growing faction of House Republicans who don't care about shutting the government down. So it's really hard for Johnson to work with the margins that he has, get this bill over the finish line in the 35 hours that he has before the funding deadline tomorrow night.
All right, Garrett, you spoke to Donald Trump on the phone. What did he tell you? How does he think this fight gets resolved?
Well, the sense I got from the president-elect is he sees all the political risk here falling on others. He told me if there's going to be a shutdown, it would be happening on President Biden's watch, not his. And he was really focused on this question of the debt ceiling more than any other issue. Of course, as Julie pointed out, the debt ceiling wasn't a major part of this conversation as recently as 36 hours ago. But Donald Trump sees that looming deadline sometime in the middle of next year as a potential speed bump or choke point where Democrats could make his life and his agenda harder. And he wants it removed, at least from his immediate way now, or better yet, removed entirely. He's long felt that the debt ceiling, A, doesn't work, and B, has sort of only a psychological impact. It's not something that effectively constrains debt. He floated the idea of getting rid of it entirely. That's an idea that Democrats had supported in the past when Republicans had used the debt ceiling against them. And right now it's left a lot of Republicans tying themselves in knots to not exactly oppose the president-elect, even if they're not particularly supportive. Listen to how John Thune, the incoming Senate Majority Leader, responded when he was asked about this.
The debt limit, for all intents and purposes, I think has limited meaning in the modern world, but it's still it is something that markets obviously pay attention to, and it's something that we need to take seriously in terms of how we're going to address it. I'm not sure exactly what that looks like.
And, Chris, I don't think there are any Republicans right now on Capitol Hill who know exactly what that's going to look like. As John Thune said, the president-elect has done some other interviews since our conversation this morning, and he has continued to remain clear that he wants to see something done about the debt ceiling right now, even threatening Republicans if they vote for a bill that doesn't deal with it in some way. So stay tuned.
The threats, Matthew Dowd, the belief that Donald Trump holds, because he said so to Garrett, that the political risk is on others, what does that mean?
Well, I find this fascinating. A couple of points here. First is, today is, in 1843, Charles Dickens published A Christmas Carol for the first time. Today is that day, an anniversary of that day. This seems like the exact opposite of the message of that novel that he wrote. basically saying, taking a rich person and saying, this is what life looks like when you don't care about other people. And then obviously redeeming that person into sort of say, yeah, mankind is my business in the course of this. This is the exact opposite of that message, which is you have a billionaire and a multimillionaire in Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, who were not even elected. This is what I don't seem to understand. They weren't even elected. They don't even require Senate approval in what they're doing, but they seem to have control over elements of the government in this. And the idea that they're telling basically Republicans who seem to be skittish about it, that the best interest of the Americans is to shut the government down, which is, quite ironic that a billionaire is trying to tell some working class person this is what's in your best interest, is to lose your job over the Christmas holidays or to lose your access to benefits over the Christmas holidays in the course of this. It's quite amazing, as I say, in the course of this, that we have unelected billionaires and unelected multimillionaires who require no Senate approval dictating what is happening in our government.
But do they have any power, Matthew, but for the fact that Donald Trump is clearly listening to them? If Donald Trump stopped listening to them or in some way indicated that he was over, let's say, Elon Musk, which some people have suggested, well, ultimately he tires of people. There's no independent power, is there? Or am I wrong about that?
Well, I mean, no independent structural power, but I think there's independent power in that this is the richest man in the world who has said, basically, if you don't do what I want, I'm going to find primary opponents against you. And so, yes, it's enhanced, obviously, by Donald Trump in his unwillingness to seem to want to weigh into policy detail, which he's never really wanted to weigh. But Elon Musk seems to have, and we've seen it as the response of Republicans to his wrongful statements in the court. It's not even fact-based, to sort of back off and say, whoa, we don't know what they're going to do. And so, yes, Donald Trump enables it, but Elon Musk unto himself has already made threats that many of the Republicans who hold office are skittish of.
So I want to play part of what Senator John Kennedy said this morning, because this is his take on a way forward.
If I were king for a day, I'm not, and I don't aspire to be. Here's what I'd do. First, I would tell everybody to take their meds. Number two, I think President Trump is going to have to consider coming to Washington. Oh. I mean, let's face it, he's the president now. It's not President Biden. President Trump needs to sit down with Mike Johnson and John Thune and come up with a new skinny CR. If the president wants to do something on the debt limit, we need to find out what it is and put it in the bill. And then the president's going to have to help Mike sell it in the House.
Is there any indication, Garrett, that Donald Trump wants to get into that level of involvement?
I haven't heard anything to suggest they're gassing up the jet down in South Florida, but I do think we are seeing already him trying to exert some pressure on House Republicans, and he's probably going to have to exert more to get what he really wants here. There are plenty of House Republicans who have never voted for a debt limit suspension or increase, much less getting rid of it entirely. There's just not a lot of ways to make the math work here. If he wants Republicans alone to solve this, as Leader Jeffries has suggested will be the case, it's going to require a lot of elbow grease from Donald Trump. If he's willing to let Democrats be part of the solution, that's a different calculus, but even that's probably going to require some salesmanship on his end. So I don't think his Truth Social posts and phone interviews today will be the last we've heard from him if he's going to get some significant percentage of what he's demanded over the last day and a half.